Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Jarby Laws, and this is my co-host.
Christopher Wells.
We appreciate all the recent support and viewership on our content. And before we do get started, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast for more content and updates.
Yes, so we just had a pretty good weekend, I would say, of basketball, right? Obviously, they really didn't give us too many games on Friday or Sunday,
Right.
but Saturday was kind of the big day in terms of all the NBA games, and we had a number of games that honestly kind of gave us some good insight into some of what these teams have been up to and how they're doing. And we'll kind of start with a few. Um, so we'll start, I guess, with the Lakers. They played Golden State. They won 118-108. This was actually their second double-digit or third straight double-digit win. Because the previous game they played, which we hadn't talked about, because I believe it was happening after we finished the recording for our last episode, they blew out the Boston Celtics in Los Angeles. And then this time around, in San Francisco, they beat the Warriors. No Draymond and Kuminga, but the last time on Christmas they played, AD, barely played in that game. So in terms of the Lakers winning, what, 4 out of 5, like 5-1 in their last 6 games or so. You look at the numbers. AD continues to dominate, right, with 36 and 13, right? LeBron had, another fantastic game, 25 points, 12 assists. Austin Reeves with 16, 5 and 7. This game, Rui was a late scratch. They started Dorian Finney-Smith, but it also had the return of Jared Vanderbilt, who had not played in nearly an entire year. His last game was February 1st of 2023 against the Boston Celtics. He got hurt in the first half with a foot injury, right, that cost him the rest of the season. He had surgery on both of his feet in the offseason. And then he's pretty much not played. This is his first game back this season. Now, I think both you and I were relatively skeptical on whether or not he could actually, was actually going to come back. We know, how these injuries go, and in terms of the discussions and, everything else around it, right? His return kept on getting pushed back because at the beginning of the season, they thought he would come back around the beginning of the season, and we
Right.
are more than halfway through the season. Not his fault, obviously. He had some extra setbacks, but in terms of this game, really the main turnaround for the Lakers as of late has been the defensive end. Just the fact that now you have more defensive players, right? D'Angelo Russell's been sent out in exchange for Dorian Finney-Smith. Jerry Vanderbilt's back, right? As opposed to maybe some other type of guys like Cam Reddish who can defend, but Vanderbilt I think is just a better player. And can do some more things in terms of he got some offensive rebounds. He had 3 steals. He played in the short role as well. They had some lineups where he was kind of acting as the 5 offensively for them, which is something that they've kind of hinted at in terms of his return. Because this is a guy that they talked about where we don't want to necessarily make too many trades until we see what it looks like with Vanderbilt back in the lineup, for whatever reason. But either way, he only played 12 and a half minutes, but they were 12 very impactful minutes, a +6. And now you just kind of see, what happens with the deadline. Obviously, AD, he mentioned the idea of, I'd like to also play at the 4 at times, so it would be kind of nice if I had another center. There have been centers that have been talked about. Apparently, Walker Kessler is the number 1 target. Some other guys like Vucevic, Kessler, Vucevic, Valanciunas, Robert Williams, and others. But for them, it continues to be better defensive performances, right? Max Christie continues to play well in the starting 5. And then the Warriors, obviously, they now drop once again below 500. They've kind of gone back and forth. They're at 10 and 20 since that 12 and 3 start, right? Where they looked like, an awesome team. And we were pretty low on that team, on the Warriors going into the season. And we'll see if they can reach that over under, right? It was in the low 40s, right? So we'll see if they can get there. They're already at, they're at 22 wins. So I guess they need to win about 21 more. But there's already 40 something games, there's 40 something games left. So, I guess they'd have to be around 500, but they continue to struggle. And obviously the injuries make it worse. But what do you see from these two teams in this game?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I feel like as good as the Lakers have been playing, in arguably, their last 10, I would say there's still a team that needs to improve. And I think that goes for the Warriors as well. Both of these teams are going to be teams I think that we have to kind of look at during the deadline, because they're going to be big time potential sellers and buyers as well. Like, I think you could make a case that the Lakers can move on from Rui, because look at their
Mm-hmm.
identity. It's really turning into 3-and-D and playmaking. You got LeBron and AD, who are obviously the focal points of the offense. You have AR, who can do some things. Obviously, Max Christie, who's pretty solid as well on the 3 and D side of things, and then Dorian Finney-Smith as well. And I think that's kind of what they should kind of veer towards. And post D'Lo, I think they have looked a lot better. So, and then like with the Warriors, I think Wiggins has rehabilitated his value a lot. So, he could be a potential trade piece if they're looking, to bring in a star or whatever. But overall in terms of the play, you know, dominating performance from AD, and I think you kind of expect that going up against the Warriors because they don't really have a real center. So, and that would be something that's kind of interesting. Do the Warriors opt in to get not even like a better defensive center, but just a taller one? Because I think that's the problem. Like small ball five is just not going to work against teams with an elite big man.
Yeah.
Like AD, Jokic, anything like that. So, I think, like I said, both these teams definitely need to improve. But if you're a Laker fan, I think you can't really be that mad because you never know. This could be like one of LeBron's like final good years, and he's still balling, and AD is also playing at an elite level of basketball as well. So
Yeah. And unlike in the previous game, they were able to hold Steph in check. He only had
yeah,
13
right,
points all in the first half. Second half, 0 for 8. I
right,
think he finished 2 of 9 from 3 in the game, and a lot of them were shots where they were tough shots, right? And part
right,
of that is the AD factor. It's not like he's guarding him every possession, but just being in the paint, making it harder for the Warriors to get into their offense. And then
yeah,
again, you look at some of the guys contributing to the Warriors offensively, and you can kind of see why they've struggled. It's just not enough. Like you mentioned, Wiggins was solid in this game with 20 points. Even Gary Payton had a solid game, and that was kind of the Laker game plan to make sure that hone in on Steph, make sure that no one else kind of, make sure that he doesn't go off because he can almost kind of single handedly get you the win. Buddy
sure,
Hield 3 of 9, 10
yep,
points, 2 for 8.
yep,
Just kind of fulfilling the Buddy Hield cycle meme, that's been going around.
mhm,
Um, Guy Santos, and Quinton Post, right? Those were names that, of guys that had been playing well recently, didn't do too much in this game. You could see flashes, right? Like, say, Quinton Post, oh, could be why you'd want to trade for, a better stretch big, a better version of a guy like that. Schroeder was okay, right? 10-3. Now he comes off the bench. Just that acquisition really hasn't worked out. And it's like what we talked about when they first made the trade, where it's a talent upgrade, but does he fit? And I think the answer kind of is no, right?
right,
Just because of the fact that it's harder for him to get to the basket. They don't really have a lot of guys that you can play in the pick and roll with because they don't play the pick and roll. And it's kind of forcing him more onto the perimeter. He's not a great jump shooter. I know he can be an okay catch and shoot guy, but it just doesn't work. So he could be a guy maybe that gets added to a trade if they end up doing it. We'll see. But yeah, just not great in that regard. But again, with that team, both of those teams, like I said, we went into the season knowing that they would need to make moves in order to actually improve and be closer to that, in upper tier, I guess. It's just
sure,
right now, standings wise, the Lakers are closer because, currently they're in that 5-6 range, whereas the Warriors are currently, I believe, in 11th. Obviously, these things can change as they have actually over the course of the season, and they're all so close and clustered up.
yeah,
But just again, solid game and solid stretch, right? Because again, they also blew out the Celtics, right? And
right,
those are two very different teams, and they were able to kind of take advantage of some of the poor play of the Celtics guards. They kept Jaylen Brown in check, so that's not a very easy team to be able to slow down.
yeah,
So, I mean,
agreed,
credit to them for being able to handle the defense. It's just
sure,
kind of a matter of, again, can you get some, like, now they do some two big lineups. Could you get a guy better than Jackson Hayes? That should kind of be a goal, right? Because,
yeah,
he's just not really that great.
right,
But they don't really have any other options, right? I mean, it's either him or Christian Coloco, a two-way guy, Trey Jamison or Jemison or whatever, a two-way guy. And that's it. No other guys, right? They don't have any other real fives that you can put out there because Christian Wood is hurt.
right, yeah. That definitely
Um,
seems to be a deadline target for them.
yeah. Then we move on to a couple other matchups. The Wolves, they completely smashed the Denver Nuggets in this game. Most of the other nationally televised games, honestly, were kind of duds, right? Like they were all doubled. I mean, they were back and forth for maybe stretches, but by the end, it was pretty much, like a complete just annihilation, right? Like the Wolves won this game by just under 30 points, and they've won both of the matchups this season. Where it's kind of funny because I think going into the season, we thought, oh, if you're the Nuggets, you shouldn't be too worried about the Wolves anymore. But they've beaten them in both of these games. Aaron Gordon, he came off the bench, still doesn't look quite right, even though the offensive numbers look okay. Jokic didn't really have that great of a game, minus 24 in the plus minus, 20 points, 11 assists. 7 turnovers, which is kind of the problem there, and only 3 rebounds. Got outplayed by Rudy Gobert in that one. Anthony Edwards, right, once again the star of the show with 34 points, 9 assists, 3 of 8 from 3, 14 of 23 from the field. So a pretty balanced offensive attack from him.
Heck yeah.
Randall gave him a good game. McDaniels gave him a good game. It was just a game where, I mean, defensively, I mean, what can you really say? I mean, they forced a ton of turnovers, and then Minnesota's offense looked really good. It just feels like it seems like the issues in terms of why those two teams are why Minnesota is such a tough matchup for the Nuggets. Continues to rear its ugly head, where they can just make a lot of those guys feel uncomfortable. Edwards can kind of bother and bully some of the Nuggets, defensive guys, and it just feels kind of odd. Obviously, we'll see what it looks like once Gordon is kind of back and healthy. But for the Wolves, you know, you got a good game from Rob Dillingham too. He's coming in off the bench and he's playing finally now that
Yes.
Dante DiVincenzo unfortunately is out with the toe injury, so this is kind of his opportunity to come in and give them some good quality minutes. So again, good game from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Against a team in the Nuggets that had been playing very well. Although, many of those wins were, against lesser teams, which, has kind of been the trend for a lot of the lower-ish seeded teams. But either way, you took out a hot Nuggets team. And if you're the Wolves, you feel pretty good about that. It's just obviously, with the way all these teams are playing, like they're 6-4 in the last 10, they're still 7th in the Western Conference. There's still a couple games behind the Clippers and the Lakers,
Yeah,
even
I
though they
think
have the tiebreaker over both teams, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, right. And I think the thing that is kind of frustrating, if you're a Minnesota fan, would definitely be the inconsistency. Like everything kind of fluctuates with this squad, and it's so weird. Like one game they'll be stellar on the defensive end, but then another game they're giving up too many points and they're not scoring. So I don't know. It's weird. Chemistry wise, I don't know if they'll ever figure it out. But the main positive that I really like, obviously, Anthony Edwards continues to have stellar games night in, night out. Julius Randle gives you serviceable stat lines as well. But Rob Dillingham actually playing is pretty cool, I think, because
Mhm.
that's going to help in the long run, I feel like. And, maybe they can, Conley can pass the torch to him at some point. But yeah, I mean, overall in this game, you pretty much got everything that you wanted. And Denver just really couldn't buy anything when it really mattered. So,
Mhm.
and their depth issues continue once again, like past certain guys on that roster. Like, you're really not getting a whole lot. Like, I guess you're getting some stuff from Peyton Watson on the defensive end here and there, but in all reality, like we all know that they need upgrades beyond, him.
Yeah. The silver lining is Jamal Murray is looking a lot better, and that
Yeah.
definitely helped. He's been much better in these games, and he was
And Russ
honestly
is
their best.
panning out too.
Yeah, and Russ is playing really well too. And
Yeah.
honestly, like Murray was their best player in this game.
Hmm.
And again, you want him to continue to look better and better because when he plays at a high level, it just makes the Nuggets, much more dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Versus if it's kind of just Jokic and then just a bunch of other guys and Murray's just another guy. It's not really what you want. It's just a matter of defensively, can they defend well enough? And they have been better defensively in the stretch. It's just again against the best teams. I'm a little bit more skeptical that they'll be able to slow those teams down. And I'm just not and I'm just kind of skeptical, like you said, on the bench guys as well. It
Yeah.
feels like they just need another guy in that rotation that could be a little bit more reliable, dependable, whatever word you want to use. And maybe we'll see if they do it. I mean, I don't know. They just don't really have too many pieces to move. I mean, that anybody wants. Like nobody wants Zeke Naji. And then any other guy where you're trying to get like, some big move, like remember the Levine stuff, well, you got to trade Porter. And, it seems like, for the Levine thing, you had to include, they wanted to include Najee and the Bulls don't want that. So it may probably be more likely a smaller ish deal for them if they
Yeah.
were to pull it off. Minnesota, I do wonder if they do anything just from the perspective of, it's tough because they're in the second apron. So what can they realistically do? But it would have to probably be something involving either like a Randall or even like a Mike Conley,
Right.
something
Right.
like that. I don't know if they're going to do that. Could it just be like move Mike Conley and get under the luxury tax? I don't know. But, I don't know. I don't necessarily know if they're going to make a major move. It feels like this might be the team and you just kind of wait for DiVincenzo, but he's going to be out for, at least a little while, right? So at
Yeah.
least a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean,
So.
I kind of expect that from both teams. I don't really expect them to do anything crazy. I'm just saying, like, in terms of the necessities, you could definitely see there is a very big talent drop off once you get past, that 6 man for Denver. So, you know, it's possible, but well, like you said, probably not probable.
Yeah. Yeah, just yeah, exactly. For the Wolves, can you get this offensive production from everybody else? Because you got your superstar in Edwards. You just kind of have to get consistent production from every. Because McDaniels has had a much better stretch recently. And when his offense kind of gets going, that makes them better.
Yeah,
It's just he's not that reliable
right,
offensively. I don't really think he kind of just comes and goes. Where it's kind of hard to trust that. Over the course of the season and the postseason, right?
right.
And then you got some guys off the bench. Maybe Dillingham can breathe some life into them on offense off the bench. We'll see. But again, that's kind of the key for them. Because defensively they can still be pretty good even with some of the different personnel. But I do wonder how it looks, since now you're without DiVincenzo, who was a big acquisition for them.
Yeah,
Then we move on. Not much to say about this other one. Boston beats down on the Mavs, right? Who continue to just be ransacked by injuries. In this game, Maxi Kleba, he's got a broken foot, so his season's probably done. That's probably a guy you might look to move if you're the Mavs. We'll see. Nothing's really gone their way. They've had like a few every once in a while we'll pick up a random win to kind of stay afloat, like they got a win over the Thunder, and a couple, but they're still 4-6 in their last 10. They've dropped all the way down to ninth in the Western Conference, which is just that's brutal because again, this was a team that we thought would win 50 plus games and be in the top three in the Western Conference, and they were right until Luka got hurt, and he's still they think he might be back before the All-Star break, but that's still a few weeks away, right? So I mean, you're still gonna have to hang on without him, right? Lively's already got the foot fracture, so I just don't really know, you know, I just don't really think you can expect a whole lot at this point, because it's just they have some individual guys that will sometimes play well, but without Lively, outside of Gafford, you just don't have a lot of size. Obviously, without Luca, you just don't have a whole lot of offense other than Kyrie and sometimes PJ Washington. Najee Marshall's been out with an illness for what seems like forever. So they've just had like a brutal season. And, for the Celtics, obviously, it's a nice bounce back win after getting, blown out by the Lakers. And their road trip still ends up being pretty successful, even though, they are 6-4 in their last 10, and they've kind of been a 500 team since the first, 25 or so games.
Yeah, it's really rough, like you said. You really feel for them as well. Like I don't even know if there's really any bouncing back either. Like because you do have to just wait for Luca. Like that's really all that I could really think of. And even then, are they going to be fully healthy as a squad? No, because I think what Lively's out, and like you said, Cleaver went down with an injury as well. So that's really tough. And even if Luca does come back, can you climb back into like a serviceable spot in the playoffs? Probably not.
Right.
Like you're already at 9, so I mean, you just gotta kind of hope and pray that you can kind of win games. But I mean, you do kind of have to shout out Kyrie because he's giving it his best shot every single night that he's healthy and playing. So, but yeah, overall, I mean, Dallas, their season, like you said, might be really cooked.
Yeah, and that's the tough part about the NBA season is that oftentimes, injuries can tend to derail, a season because of the fact that, you just never know what's going to happen. And obviously for the Mavs, it's not just Luca, right? Because like obviously he's out, but then it kind of compounds on everything else, and then everybody else ends up having to miss time. And when that happens, you're really in a tough spot. So not much to say for that game. And then, like I said, for the Celtics, it's a good bounce back win because for them, kind of the issue is just White and Holiday haven't been as good in the last, month or so. They can't hit shots as consistently. They look a little bit slower. Jaylen Brown, his numbers have been pretty down this season, right? His shooting splits, his efficiency have all kind of been, pretty bad, especially considering last year was probably his best season as a pro. So
Sure.
not really sure what's going on there. But, again, if you can get those guys back to what they were doing early in the season, they'll be fine. So obviously, like, this next month or so probably will kind of show us, if it's kind of just not the, and again, it could just be they're not quite as good as last year, and it could also be the league is also just a little bit better. So by comparison, they don't look as dominant, because like last year we were talking about how they were blowing teams out at like every other game.
Hmm.
That hasn't really happened too much this year. And now they've had some games where they've gotten blown out, which really didn't happen last year too much at all. So just kind of something of note, and we'll see where that continues. But again, for them, I even when Dallas is healthy, I still think it's a tough matchup for them against the Celtics just because of the fact that, there's, the way that the Celtics play, it puts some of Dallas's front court players, I think, in some tough spots where, like, a guy like Daniel Gafford has to come out and try to guard Jason Tatum, after, off of, with the switches. And
Yeah.
then, their bigs can't really punish the Celtics, in those smaller-ish lineups because, like, Tatum can guard centers and he can get
Hmm.
rebounds and things like that. We saw that in the finals, and it sucks that we're just probably not going to see this Dallas team healthy because I think it is probably better than last year's team in terms of the talent,
100%.
but we won't probably get to really see that, and if we do, it probably won't be until right at the end.
Yeah, man. Like you said, it really does suck. But I'm not really super worried about Boston. I think it's more so
Right.
a slump. They're just under a lot of, not necessarily pressure, but just under a lot of attention. And now everything that they do right or wrong is gonna, kind of be magnified.
Yeah. Then another one, just kind of a brief touch on this, right? The Pacers blew out the Spurs 136-98. They were in Paris, right? The game before, the Spurs blew them out, basically about the same score, same margin. Just Tyrese Halliburton went off in the third quarter, pretty much ended the game there. And the Pacers have been playing better basketball, right, in the last month or so, right? Thomas Bryant comes off the bench as the backup big. Neesmith's back, right? He was out for a while, right? And, these other guys have all kind of, you know, fit into their roles pretty well, and they're starting to look more like the team that we were hoping to see earlier this season when they were really struggling. And Halliburton, obviously, that's also kind of been the key too, because again, he was struggling earlier in the season, and now you're starting to get those better versions of him, where when he plays like that, it just makes them so much better.
Yeah, 100%. I think, um, overall, I've been thoroughly impressed with how the Pacers have kind of, handled the adversity that's been thrown at them. I think the depth is there for sure. Siakam is actually having a pretty solid season, I think, alongside obviously Halliburton as well. Bouncing back a little bit here and there. Nebhard, I think, is solid as well, but I think they have some flexibility to potentially move some of these guys and
Yeah.
even upgrade, or a better lateral if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a must win and a free win in my opinion, against a team that you're pretty much better than in all facets. So I think
It's kind of like one of those classic, because like there's always the games where you play twice in a short amount of time, and oftentimes like it's a split
yeah,
because one team wins one, and it's just very difficult for the same exact result to happen twice in the short span. It happens, and that's
yeah,
kind of what happened in this one.
yeah, and
Is
they continue to
Spurs
just be deep and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Then we had, and so those were the nationally televised games, but we actually had some league pass games that honestly, some of them were actually better than, the nationally televised games. There was one, which was the Cavs and the Rockets, and the Rockets were actually able to pull off the win in Cleveland, 135-131. So a very high scoring game, right? And, the Rockets, had been, earlier in the season, not a great offensive team, and they've been better. They're 8-2 in their last 10. Now they're up to 13th, in points per game. So, good news for them, just because of the fact that we talked about them earlier in the season where the offense might be their undoing. And, hey, they're ninth in offensive rating, too. One of the best records in the NBA. Part of that is you're getting much better production from Jalen Green. He's been much better as of late in the last several games, where now he's kind of showing that, star level talent that we were kind of hoping to see out of him, that we weren't
hmm
necessarily
hmm
sure whether or not it was just kind of a stretch, flash in the pan, or, started something really good. Got some good Van Vliet minutes, Sengun, Dylan Brooks, Amen Thompson, right, starting in place of Jabari Smith Jr. He's been fantastic for them.
yes,
Every night he's basically bound to get, a double-double, maybe even a triple-double. Steven Adams coming back. Now he's healthy. He's been helping out. And this is the second time they were able to beat the Cavs this season. And, they actually played them last week, right? Where crazy game where it was back and forth, but the Rockets had the edge for most of that game. And then the Cavs, Tari Eason fouls Darius Garland on a three. It's a flagrant. He has an opportunity to take the lead at the line. He misses 2 out of the 3 free throws and then makes the third one to get it to a 1-point game. And then they end up losing the game because they can't get a good shot off. But it kind of shows, some of the problems that Cleveland could possibly have where, against a physical team, they don't have a lot of physical guys, right? We've talked about it, the guards, the backcourt is kind of small, and that could be a problem, for the Cavs. And, now they're 36-9, which obviously is still a really good record, but they have not played as well in their last, few games. They've actually, lost what 5 of their last 8 games, including 2 to Houston, 1 to Philly, which was kind of wild,
Hmm.
right? The one with like the mascot, and the Sixers players guarding the inbounds. And then the loss, obviously the horrible loss to Oklahoma City, and then they got blown out by the Pacers. That was the game where Halliburton got hurt. So, is there something kind of going on, with this Cavs team? I guess obviously you can talk about the Rockets first, if
Yeah.
you want, to add some additional stuff, and then is there kind of some reason to be concerned about this Cavs team?
Dude, the Rockets have been amazing. And it's
Mhm.
really been the individual play and the collective team play. Like you said, Amon Thompson definitely going to be first team all defense. At least he's going to be one of my picks. The guy can guard practically 1 through 5. I think we even saw him stuff Evan Mobley. And that's a 7 footer that you're guarding, and that's pretty crazy. So, and him being able to find stuff on the offensive end is key for them, I think, because we already knew how stellar he and his brother are on the defensive end. So for him to kind of find a groove offensively is pretty cool. And yeah, Tari Eason as well. Like those two guys defensively, I don't know how teams are really supposed to combat that. And I think that's kind of what you saw with Cleveland. Like you said, when you have physical guys like that who aren't going to shy away from contact, they're not just going to give in to the fact that you're 7 foot or, there's two of you, like they can kind of get stops. And that's what you saw. Like perimeter wise, okay, yeah, Garland went off, Donovan Mitchell, had to score at a high volume as well. But you look at Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, yeah, they kind of just got not necessarily like punked or shut down, but it kind of just felt invisible if you want me to be honest. Like I think it's pretty bad when Amon Thompson is out rebounding, both of your
Yeah,
bigs. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I feel about it. But yeah, Cleveland, I think they do have their fair share of problems. I think they're so good at what they do on the offensive end, and making the right pass and shooting it at the right time because it's kind of funny. They don't necessarily like swing the ball the most in the NBA, but they're just good at finding the right um the right play at the right time. So I think
yeah.
as long as they continue to do that and don't shy away from their game, they'll be
Mhm.
okay. But I think in this game they shied away from it a little bit too much. I would probably have wanted them to go to their big men a little bit more, and I think that's going to be interesting. Like come playoff time, who do they run the offense through? Because you do have 4 guys that can really, or I'll say 3 guys that can run the offense. To be honest, like I think in
Yeah.
Garland, Mitchell and Mobley, like you do have 3 good options, but who's going to be like number one come playoff time, and who's going to be the most effective? That's kind of the thing. And
Right.
also on the defensive end, they can't get
Mhm.
bullied like that.
Yeah. And also, like recently, the Cavs have not been shooting quite as well from three, right? Like
Sure.
they're below 40% now when they've been shooting like above 40% from three for most of the season. So that'll do it too.
Mm-hmm.
And Mobley missed some of these games as well, so obviously that can kind of hurt. But just as a whole, they have not looked quite as good recently. And again, kind of goes to show you like how crazy that 73-9 record was for Golden State, right? Because these teams, were running ahead of that. And now, yeah, they're not going to get past that. Not that we expected them to, anyways, but it's just like, just, it kind of just harkens back to how special that team was. But yeah, so great win for Houston. And they swept the Cavs on the season series. They were 8 of their last 10. And they're second in the Western Conference, where they're looking like a really, really good team. And again, a lot of it is going to come down to what are we getting out of Jalen Green and Şengün in the postseason? Because if you get that version of Jalen Green, plus continued Şengün play, I mean, they might surprise some people and be able to do more than I think you might expect. It
That's why
kind
we
of comes
picked the
down to
over.
yeah, exactly. Glad we picked the over. Yeah, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. We're gonna hit that one, obviously. I mean, I think we're getting on that pretty soon. I think the over was about 42 or so, or
Yeah.
40 or something like that. So yeah, we're on the track for getting that one. So that's one that
Mm-hmm.
we got right. Um, then we move on to another, I think, pretty good game, fun game. Clippers Bucks, right? This was, a matchup where obviously Kawhi's back. He plays, 25 minutes. So he's on still a minutes restriction, which is fine. But he had 18, 3, and 4. He had some moments where he looked pretty good, had some good plays off the dribble. Harden, star of the show, 40 points, 9 assists, 12 of 12 from the line, 4 of 10 from 3. Norman Powell also dropping 33, 6 rebounds, 3 of 8 from the field. The Bucks just couldn't stop those guys at all. Kevin Porter Jr. off the bench, 8 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals. I mean, you're just pretty much, if you're the Clippers, getting anything and everything from all your guys, right?
Yeah.
Zubac with a double-double. And they continue to be really impressive. Where again, this was a team where we picked the under on that one. That one's definitely going to come back to bite us, just because of the fact that we didn't really expect much from this team, especially when the news of Kawhi being out initially indefinitely came out. But they've been very impressive, especially on the defensive end, and obviously again, Norman Powell basically playing really well, and kind of, now obviously he's not Paul George, but the fact that you still have another 20-point per game score, even after losing Paul George, that's big time. That helps. He's having a career year, and again, all of this with Kawhi barely playing too. So that's the part that I think is really impressive.
Yeah, it's nuts. The role players of Doom have just come out to play. But, Norman Powell and just, what he's been able to do has been pretty cool, ascending from that 6-man role and being a starter and things like that. And James Harden also, being a facilitator is really, really cool and nice to see. We've already talked about that in previous years, though, where, he's definitely molded his game into more of a facilitating kind of guy. But for him to have a vintage, Harden performance is pretty sick to watch, I think. Zubac obviously continuing to do his thing. And yeah, defensively, they're good on both ends of the floor, and I think that's the pleasant surprise. Like they have good role players and stuff like that, and collectively, they play really good team basketball. And shout out to Ty Lue because he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, yeah. Kawhi coming back, if he can come back and play more consistently, that should help boost their
Yeah.
offense too. Because that's the guy that can give you, 25
Mm-hmm.
ish or whatever a night. When he's healthy, it's just a matter of him being healthy. So that's kind of the thing where, like, now they've kind of snuck in as a sleeper team. Again, we'll see what it looks like, come playoff time. I don't expect them to really make a move. Maybe they move Tucker just because, clearly he doesn't want to be there. But I don't see them making a major move. But they, again, that's super impressive that all these guys have come in and have pretty much figured out their role. And Ty Lue, like you said, has got them playing hard, especially on the defensive end, one of the best defensive teams in the league. So,
Yeah.
even though the offense has been kind of spotty, it was understandable without Kawhi. Now with him coming back into the mix, that should make them better. So, like I said, where they could be another team that kind of surprises some people, and they already have the star power, proven star power compared to some of these other teams. We'll just have
Yeah.
to see. Again, the health from Kawhi is always such a factor for him because
100%. Yeah.
right when you kind of start to believe, then the health is kind of taken away, and then you just can't really buy into them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then from the Bucks' perspective, it's a tough loss because they actually, in fairness, have been playing really well as of late. This was only their second loss in their last 10 games. But it's a tough one, right? Because obviously they've, started to kind of inch closer towards that top three, right? They're still fourth. But then, you kind of look at a game like this, and this is one of those games that's a little bit tough, right? And again, Lillard at 29, he was 6 for 16 though. 1 of 9 from three. He shot 16 to 17 from the line. Giannis at 36 and 13. Prince played well. Lopez was okay, but then you look at Chris Middleton. He's the sixth man coming off the bench, and he's scoreless, right? 0 of 4 from the field, 0 of 2 from three, minus 11, and he just hasn't really been able to give them any level of consistency. And that's kind of the tough part when, his name has been in trade rumors, right, as of late, right? Because there's been, we don't know if it's going to happen, right? But there's been rumors about, the Bucks trying to chase after guys like Zach LaVine or, even a Bradley Beal. And obviously, if they make a move like that, he's going to have to be in those trade rumors, or he's going to have to be in those deals, right? Because they don't have too many other guys that make the type of money that he does that they're probably going to be willing to move. Because then that gets into the the Giannis Lillard territory, right? Because I think Middleton's the third highest paid guy. So, right, either him or Lopez, one of those two. So that's the tough part, there where, you know, him kind of going to the bench, him not playing as well, not being able to find a groove, again, it wouldn't shock me if if there's a Jimmy Butler deal, that wouldn't be too surprising if, there's a world where he ends up getting moved to the Heat. Not that Butler goes to Milwaukee, but it wouldn't shock me if they tried to find a way to move him because he may just not have it at this point because, he hasn't been that great this season, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy. Obviously, he had the ankle surgery, but this is basically one of his worst seasons. As a pro, right? Since he's been, a star level guy. So that's the tough part there, where maybe you wait for him to get better, but how much longer can you realistically wait? And even if you do wait, can he get there? We just don't know, because he had a good playoff performance last year. But obviously, with his age and the continued pileup of injuries, again, it makes sense why he's in these rumors. Especially again, games like this are tough. And again, now he's a guy that's going to get hunted and picked on defense by a lot of teams, which was not the case, right? Prior to these injuries, because he was not like an elite lockdown defender necessarily, but he was a good defender. Certainly not a guy that you were trying to target, but now he is that. And now his offense also is kind of not really there consistently either. So that's kind of a warning sign where, now, okay, now you kind of wonder what they're going to do about that. Because that's probably the piece that if he can't give him anything, that's where you kind of have to upgrade, in addition to maybe some other spots. But obviously, he's the higher paid guy. He doesn't have too many years left on his deal, so you may have to move on and just kind of cut your losses.
Yeah, it's tough because I think if there's one thing that we've learned from the duo of Giannis and Dame, I think there's no in between with these two guys. I think you either need to be you either need to surround them with pure elite offensive players or defensive players, in the same way, pure defensively elite guys, and I think that's the tough part. And Middleton is kind of preventing them from doing both of those things. Because I think if you do get off of his contract, you could potentially, bring in some guys that will help you on either end of the floor. And I think that's what they're struggling with when they do lose. Because when they do win, I think overall it seems to be very good team basketball, while also the individual guys like Giannis and Dame kind of get theirs. Um, but yeah, Middleton I think is just a little bit too inconsistent. And he just doesn't provide you what you would want out of a true third option. And you don't want a guy getting paid like that coming off the bench.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of and that's kind of where, once he was moved to the second unit, that was kind of where the concern was, because it was like, okay, maybe his body's not quite responding to the
Hmm.
workload he's got. Maybe he's just not playing well, and they don't kind of really want to mess it up in terms of the rhythm they were kind of getting into, because they had started winning games even while he was out.
Yep.
So maybe trying to integrate him, maybe it just hasn't really worked. So that's the tough part, in terms of when you're trying to win a title and you're trying to sustain winning, right? Sometimes you have to make tough decisions, and he may be the one that's the casualty, right? He makes 31.5 million this year, and then he's got a player option next season for 34 million. He's already 33, and he's had a bunch of injuries, so that's probably the guy um where, if you're going to make a big move, right, that's probably the guy that's going to have to be in the deal, right? Because after that, they don't have a ton of guys that make a lot of money, right? Brooke Lopez maybe at 23 million, 36. We'll see what they do with that. You got Portis at 13 or 12.5 million. Then you got Pat Connaughton at 9 million. That's the other guy that you probably would want to move, just because he's not even really a part of the rotation when their team is fully healthy.
Right.
So, they definitely have to make some moves in order to get better, even though they have been, in fairness, playing better as of late, right? It's not like they've been bad recently. They're 8-2 in their last 10.
Right.
And, since that horrible start, they've been fine. It's just, I still don't really think they're quite good enough, even though, again, if you get to the playoffs with, Giannis playing at this level, you got a chance, to maybe do something. But,
Yeah.
again, as we've talked about, you got to kind of be a top 3 seed if you want to win the title. It's just,
Yep.
only 2 teams in the history of the NBA were able to do that without being one of those seeds.
Yep. It's the way life goes, man.
Yeah. So now, I guess we'll get into, some potential news and rumors, going on around the league, because obviously, honestly, we're getting pretty close to the trade deadline. We're, basically a week and a half or so away. According to the Athletic, the Pacers are hesitant on a Turner extension. They're not sure if they want to pay Miles Turner 30 plus million a year. So there's a possibility where maybe they might trade him and try to get something back for him. It's not set in stone. It comes from Jovan Buha of the Athletic. So, we'll see. If anything happens there, I mean, is that something that you think is going to happen, or is it more so maybe like just like pressure in terms of, both sides probably still want to continue this, and maybe it's just something that's just kind of coming out, to kind of put some pressure on somebody?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking it's pressure. I just don't really foresee it happening, to be honest. I think it might be a little
I
bit
guess,
of smoke and mirrors. I don't know. What do you think?
yeah, I guess the part that's kind of just bizarre is they've been playing so much better recently. Like you could understand maybe if like they were really struggling and they felt like they need to move. Plus, also like again, you lost both of your backup bigs to Achilles. So if you move Miles Turner, unless you move him for another center, you're basically hoping and banking on Thomas Bryant. I mean, I'm assuming they would swap him out for a center, but let's say, because that's one of the rumors. Like, let's say you move him to the Lakers, they're not trading a center for Miles Turner. They don't have any centers to
Yeah,
give you.
right,
So,
right, right.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, what is it like? What is that? That would be like Rui in pieces for Miles Turner. Like, no, that doesn't really make a whole
Right,
lot of sense.
right.
So that's where I'm kind of like, it's something to keep an eye on. Not saying it's gonna happen. Um, but obviously, it may not be. It's not nothing. Just from the perspective of clearly something's going on here. But again, with the Pacers, the problem for them is once you start paying Miles Turner and everyone else, it starts to become a really expensive team. And how good is this team in terms of like, how good when this team is at full strength and they're at their best? Are they good enough to make you feel comfortable paying all those guys? Because there are some team governors might say no, and then there are others that might say yes. It's just a matter of how good can this team actually be. And they've been much better as of late after the bad start, right? Because obviously they were kind of in the bottom half of the Eastern Conference for most of the season, but then obviously they've turned it up since then. They've been significantly better, and now they're fifth in the Eastern Conference, a full 2 games ahead of the Pacers, who lost to the Magic the other day. So
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But
yeah, and then moving on, another piece from the Athletic: Kyle Kuzma growing less patient. Indications Kyle Kuzma less patient amid trade rumors. All indications are that he's less patient now than with the Wizards than he was a season ago. Obviously, if you remember last year, right? The reports about he could have been traded to Dallas, but he preferred to stay in Washington. Now he probably regrets that decision, possibly, because he had a very good season last year. He has not been very good this year, as as a Wizards fan. He's not like a strange quote, right, where he said something along the lines of like, he's done trying to fit in into everything that they're doing here. Quote, just being more assertive, demanding the ball, not just going out there and trying to let people develop, just playing my game. Some very strange, bizarre wording. Um, could possibly be trying to force his way out. Don't know if it's going to be successful. Doesn't make a ton of money, right? 23 million, but again, he's not had a good season. So I think you have to bank on, if you're the other team, that this season is kind of just, a weird year where he just doesn't really care because he doesn't want to be there. And that it's not like a sign of like, are some of these bad habits maybe being developed on a bad team starting to rub off, on him? I don't know, because Poole's played pretty well, so not really too many concerns about him. Like he could be a guy where I wonder if a team takes a flyer on him at the death. I'm not saying they will, but like it could be something to explore. But the Kuzma one, it's just something to think about because again, the numbers are just so stark. Because last year, 22, 6 and 4, good efficiency. This season, 15, 6 and 3. On horrible efficiency. I know he's also had some injuries too, so maybe that could be part of it. But obviously you're closer to this situation since that's your favorite team. But what do you think? Because I know you want them to move him, but at this point, do you think they will? Because now whatever they were looking for last season, I don't think they're going to get at this point, and they may have missed their chance in terms of like selling high compared to now. You're probably going to have to sell low.
yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't matter what you get for him. Just get him off the team. Like the quotes you were talking about, it clearly states he doesn't want to be here. And that's kind of been circulating since the beginning of the season and from the jump. When the season started and he became healthy, I was like, yeah, we need to get him off the court because he's taking away shots from the young guys who I think I prioritize over him a little bit more. And you named his numbers; they're not good. Quite frankly, they stink actually. And it's tough to watch in my opinion. And I don't think you're going to be able to get those multiple first round picks that you wanted
Right.
with a bad contract or something like that. You're probably looking at a bad contract and maybe some seconds now, which
Hmm.
I think you might have to settle for. And I wouldn't be mad at that because it'll open up more space specifically for our wing guys. Like Bilal Koulibaly, I think he needs more development. Obviously, we know what he is on the defensive end, but
Mhm.
offensively, if Kuzma's out there, he takes away too many shots from him. I would also like to see Keyshawn George develop, his jumper a little bit more. And yeah, with Kuzma gone, I think both of those things could be possible. Um,
Mhm.
it's just unfortunate because I think there could have been a future where Poole and Kuzma could have been probably, solid like role players if this team ever got to a point where, they could be somewhat decent. But I think, yeah, that window's passed for sure now. And yeah,
Yeah.
they just don't have the pieces. They won't have them for probably the next couple of seasons. And I think the only way you're going to get those pieces is probably by starting with moving Kyle Kuzma. I expect them to
Yeah.
be big sellers at the deadline.
Yeah.
I'm expecting Kuzma to be gone, maybe even a Kispert,
Mhm.
Brogdon. I think Poole is more likely to be the guy that stays a little bit longer. Number one, because he's
Yeah.
selling tickets for a horrible team. Um,
Mhm.
and also I mean, not necessarily like leading, but I think you can tell that there is a upgrade in maturity, I guess,
Yeah, pretty much.
in his play style and the way he carries himself compared to last year. But with Kuzma, it's really been the inverse. And I think, yeah, his tenure here is done. He clearly doesn't want to be here. He's tired of losing. He doesn't want to be in a real rebuilding situation, or else you wouldn't be saying things and talking about player development
Yeah, I
of your
mean, it's a team
teammates.
that has a number of players that, individually are fine, but together, it's just like you said,
Not going to
it
work.
doesn't work, which we knew it wasn't going to.
Yeah,
6 wins is, pretty low, I would say at this point, so we'll see if they can kind of get some more there. But yeah,
they're
like
tanking.
like you said,
If you watch Wizards games, they will take certain people out who are in a rhythm out on purpose. Like they're clearly tanking.
yeah, so yeah, and that's the thing. Like, there's a number of guys, but like again, as you already mentioned, Kuz, Brogdon, Rashawn Holmes, maybe
Yeah,
right, Valanciunas,
yeah.
a bunch of guys, right, that probably should be, you should look to move, but you probably won't get much more than seconds for probably any of those guys. I mean, at this point, just given the other guys that have been moved, right, and they're kind of in a similar tier, right, where that's probably what you're going to get back. But like you said, you kind of have to take something back because there's no real reason for those guys to be there. Because, like you said, ideally, you'd like to prioritize the development of your young players, and it's kind of hard to fit all those guys' minutes together. When they kind of have to share the space, with some of those other guys, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of the issue there. We'll see.
Yeah.
And then one last one, uh, Jimmy Butler is expected to rejoin the Heat. After it'll be on Monday, so probably after you watch this. So his suspension will be lifted. We're gonna go through this again. We'll see how it goes, obviously. And then after that, it's gonna be against the Orlando Magic, and then obviously again, they got basically about a week and a half to figure out what they're gonna do with this thing, because clearly they're still kind of waiting on an ideal offer. Whatever the package is, we don't know, but we'll see how this goes again because they tried this already and it didn't really look all that amazing. Clearly, again, doesn't want to be there. We know he doesn't want to be there. He'd rather be anywhere except for Memphis, I guess. But you know, we'll see. What do you think about this?
It's so stupid to be honest, and this is a lot of hullabaloo for somebody who's averaging 17 points. I know he's not like a regular season guy, never really has, toted that. And we know that teams normally have him on the roster because he elevates his play so much in the postseason. But at the end of the day, is it really worth all of this, drama, this back and forth? Like he's been suspended by his own team for behavioral issues and what do they call it? Behavior detrimental to the
Yeah,
team's
conduct.
success. Like what are we
Yeah,
doing, man? They he clearly doesn't want to be there. Just put him on a DNP and something. I don't know because this is ridiculous. And yeah, just please find a deal, please. And it's like
yeah,
we can't keep doing this where you're in and out of the lineup and you're getting yourself suspended because you don't want to be there. Like either part ways or suck it up. That's what I would say. It's kind of getting annoying, and I feel for Heat fans
yeah,
and his teammates. I really feel for his teammates because it's like, bro, WTF are you doing? Like, actually, you're literally selling the season because they have bright spots. I said that last time. Like Tyler Hero is playing the best basketball of his life. Bam still mid this season, but overall, I think there are things that you like Kalel Ware playing solid
They have
minutes.
At least they have Kalel Ware, who's been playing
Right,
fantastic
right,
basketball
right,
since he's been able to get minutes after the Thomas Bryant trade.
right.
Who knows, he might have played himself into the rookie. He might, play himself into the rookie of the year favor.
Possible, very possible. But yeah, Jimmy Butler's holding back Miami. I'm keeping it real because I think whoever they get and whatever they get in return is going to impact that team on a more positive note than Jimmy will.
Well, guess we'll
Might
have
be
to
a
see
hot
what
take.
Miami. Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to see what Miami does about that situation because clearly it needs a
Watch it be
resolution.
nothing. I swear if it's nothing.
That would be so hard to envision. I mean, like, what are they just gonna send him home the rest of the season? I
Right,
don't know.
right, right.
He's gonna lose out on all that money. I don't know. We'll see. It's definitely been an annoying situation, but it's one obviously that we have to discuss and talk about because of obviously it's still a big story.
Yeah, yeah.
Regardless of how we feel about it. But that's it for today's episode of Off Ball Takes. Again, let us know your thoughts on all these teams, all these games in the comments. Again, if you leave a comment on the video, we'll read it at the beginning of the next one. Right. And obviously continue to like and subscribe to our videos to help our channel grow and to help our content continue to be seen more and more. And we'll see you in the next episode.